Welcome, everybody, to Ben's number 6 POPCast, the Who's Ben POPCast number 6. You don't need to be right, just not dumb. And the idea came to me, well, let's get to that in a minute. But first of all, I'd like to explain who I am. I'm an entrepreneur who struggles daily to overcome the conformity effects from my education. I believe that nonconformity is probably mistaken as ADHD, and thankfully it was handled physically and not medically back when I was in school. The POP, as in POPCast, is an acronym. The first P stands for passion, and that's what you need to attract and inspire other people. The O is for obsession, and obsession is the only way that you can stay on a constantly moving target that's often obscure. And the final P is for perseverance, because the journey to being an entrepreneur, business owner, creating something that didn't exist yet is just doggone hard. It's really hard, and it's filled with sleepless, tearful nights. However, if you arm yourself with these basic 3 core values: 1, manage your resources so that you have cash flow. 2, follow up so that you can truly appreciate the value that others add. And 3, never waver from making everything you touch awesome and impressive. And with that said, the next place I like to move to is I like to cover a quote I found from Calvin Coolidge some years back, and it goes like this: "Nothing in this world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent." Wow. That's really helped me a lot. So it occurred to me recently, the word non-dumb. That's like I hyphenated. I don't know if it's non or not. I'm kind of not sure how I want it to be yet. But I started to realize that there's this idea about being right or not being wrong. And I started to realize, it occurred to me last week. I was like, as an entrepreneur, you need to get moving. You just need to start going. In fact, that's perhaps one of the biggest problems, is that we have this idea that we need to be right. And the only way to know that you're going to be right is to really not do anything. Because as we look back, who knows what was right? I mean, really, only in the future, when you look back over the past, will you ever be able to say that something was the right direction or a wrong direction. But ultimately, you really just got feedback. I can't help but recognize that Fred Smith got laughed out of Harvard for his idea of Federal Express. Can you imagine that? The professor didn't think that that was a good idea. And so I guess he got a C in the class or something like that. So the story I've heard, haven't researched it. You would think that I would turn off my cell phone so that I don't keep getting these messages while I'm doing the POPcast. Anyhow, I just think about that, and it makes sense. I mean, I could see somebody looking at it and thinking, hey, you're going to take every package, like even if it's going across town, you're going to fly it all to a centralized location. I believe it's in Memphis. I flew in there in my airplane one night, and it was like at night, there were a ton of airplanes in and out of there. It was like, holy cow, there was a lot of airplanes. And you're going to fly them all to a centralized hub in the United States, and then you're going to fly them back out. And okay, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, I suppose. I suppose you could look at it like that. And it probably didn't make a lot of sense. It's occurred to me, the only way you really get anything in this world, like anything that doesn't exist yet, is you have to will it into existence. kind of like when I say will it into existence, it reminds me of my flight instructor when we were doing a soft field takeoff. And a soft field takeoff is when it's a grass field. And I guess when I was learning to fly, I kept my airplane at a really POS, really a bad airplane. It was a Cessna 150 and not a very good airplane, but it did fly. And somehow it managed to pass inspections. And I remember my flight instructor, I actually kept it at his field, which was a grass field. And I remember we were, covering the soft field takeoff. And he said to me, we're going to stall it off the ground. Stall it off the ground. That's what every time I think about how you get a business going, it's like, it really takes stalling it off the ground. And when we say stall it off the ground, the reason that the wing produces lift, which makes us fly, is that the airflow going over the wing travels a longer distance than the airflow passing under the wing. So if you ever look at an airplane, you'll find that the bottom of the wing is relatively flat and the top of the wing is curved. So the air travels further and it gets sucked up into the air if you have an engine and you're able to produce power. But he said to me, we're going to stall it off the ground. Well, that's something that happens. We call it ground effect in airplanes. And essentially, within 20 feet of the ground, it's about, I guess it's something like 2/3 of the wingspan, that distance down to the ground, that the wing can become airborne at a lower speed than what you can actually fly in. So you're actually really in a stalled position when you get off the ground like that. So you literally have to stall it off the ground, and then you push the nose forward so that you fly within ground effect. That's what we call it, ground effect. And we stay in ground effect until we build up enough airspeed to where we've got the air flowing over the wing is going fast enough that we can actually climb out. So that's how it works. That's the same thing with business. I realize with business that I've many times wanted to do stuff and I just couldn't get it accomplished. And I looked back and I was like, how did I ever get a business going? I mean, sometimes I've had such frustration that I don't know how I ever got it going. I mean, I have just been through just so much pain in business. And it was so hard. It was 3 years before I got my first paycheck. And then it was only $1,000 a month for the next 5 years. And I literally was working well over 100 hours a week. I mean, it was just insane. The highlight was when I literally built a place to live at work. And it actually gave me a lot more time because I was able to pull away from work since I was already there and I didn't work as much. Kind of crazy. Eventually, things changed in my life and it caused me, which in future POPcasts I'll explain, because really I want to inspire people that are starting a business, want to start a business, or have a business, because in every case it's painful. There's always a next action that we have to do, and that's what really got me thinking about being non-dumb, or not dumb, one of the two. I like to be grammatically correct since I'm a publisher in my other business, and I'm like, it's publishers that maintain our language, if you think about it. The reason that we have such a beautiful language in English and we can talk to each other and anywhere in the country is the foundation of it is with publishers. And so as a publisher, I kind of owe a debt of gratitude to making sure that I write grammatically correct sentences. It's like an honor. If you stop and think about it, it's really an honor. It's an honor that I can create something that somebody will be able to use and that they can come back to me and realize that it touched them, that I made a difference. Like I did something that made a difference in their life. I made it so that they understood something that they were confused about or turned on a light. And the reason is because I never did good in school. I mean, not that I didn't want to, I just could never read a textbook. I mean, I'd read it over and over and over, and I'd read that same paragraph like 5 times, 6 times, and I still didn't understand what it said. Textbooks are written in polysyllable words and typically passive language. They cost a fortune. That's another thing. You realize it takes 14 years to make a textbook, I guess. There's an enormous amount of technology in a textbook. Anyhow, that's another subject. But I realized the other thing that school does is it kind of tells us that, well, we have to get these degrees, we have to get these things done before we know things well enough to actually be able to come out and use it in the world, and it's kind of funny because here I am as a legal publisher and literally making a difference in many people's lives, and many people use the products that I created or the team I have has created at this point, but at one point it was me. And we make a difference in the world. It's so cool. And I look back at it, and it's an area of legal publishing, and it's like, wow, I got a D in business law at the community college the first time I took it, a D. It's funny because I felt like I understood it. Like, I really felt like I understood it, and obviously I do, but for some reason I wasn't able to color in the correct dots, I guess. To this day, I've never really understood it. But I do understand it in certain ways, and then it's hard for me to understand stuff, I've always found. And so it's all about making things simple for people. Simple's hard to get to. It's easy to keep things in a complicated way or making it complex or to push things off to something that you have to get accomplished before you're going to go and try something new or you're going to do this or whatever it is. And it's not. It's like, if you really want to know the difference, you just have to start going. You really have to just start doing it. And that's really what it takes. And it's kind of like these POPCasts that I'm doing. I'm hoping, this is POPCast number 6, that I got my dial set right. I'm looking over there. Unfortunately, through the headphones, I'm hearing something different than necessarily is getting recorded. And I'm learning. The last one, number 5, I really liked it. And I didn't want to re-record it, even though the audio was so bad. And I want to be inspirational to other people. Like one day, this podcast, or POPcast, I like to call it, it's going to touch entrepreneurs and business people, and they're going to want to start listening to it, and I'm going to get a following. And when I do, I want people to go back and see where I used to be and recognize that it really is just a matter of you start doing it. Now, I was relatively somewhat not dumb, but even not being dumb, I still made a lot of mistakes. And so, not dumb, we come up with where we want to go, what we want to accomplish, right? And then we start working at it, and it's just hard. Like, if I could show you the kinds of notes that I've taken, I remember thinking, what am I going to talk about week after week? I mean, I do like to talk. And what am I going to cover? And I started looking at it, and I remembered making a list of like 39 subjects that I could do. And all of a sudden, after I did number 5 really got me inspired. And then I started writing out number 6, and I ended up not covering it. I was like, when I write it out, I end up reading it, and I don't come across real when I'm reading it. So I got to thinking about it, and I thought, how do you really get something done in this world? It's not easy. Like, it might look simple, but let me tell you, simple is not easy. Simple is the hardest thing you can possibly do. You really have to know it to get simple. So I realized the other day when I was having a discussion with somebody and they were like, well, I don't know. And I was like, well, I don't know either. I go, maybe that's the problem with the entrepreneur, is that there's all this conditioning about being right and learning the subject matter and knowing all this stuff. And then when we know it, then we can come up with a direction, and I don't think it works that way. In fact, I think that when you really learn a lot, you become crippled. You become immobilized. I was talking to my sister this morning, and I was using certain words, and she was correcting me on the usage of the words. I kind of enjoyed that. I wish I could interview her, and she could correct some of the words I'm using now. But you become unable to go in a direction. You become unable to accomplish. And so I thought about it, and I was like, you don't have to know. Really, that's not it. You just have to not be dumb. You have to be not dumb. I want to hyphenate that. Not dumb. Be not dumb. Because that's a lot different threshold than being right or worrying about being wrong. Like, you can be right or wrong. I mean, Fred Smith, when he started Federal Express, it could have been right or wrong. Obviously, when he conceptualized it, it was wrong, according to a professor. But then as he did it, it still wasn't right. I remember years ago, I had a college class, and somebody in the class, actually, it was a master's program I was in. I didn't finish it, but I was in it. And I remember we had somebody who worked for Federal Express in the class, and he actually did a presentation on what Fred Smith went through. So I'm really just going by memory from many, many years ago. And I didn't even know, like, all of this. Like, it was, they just promoted good policies towards customers. And I guess that early on, they were constantly running into cash flow problems. Like, he just could not keep that business going. I guess, so the story I was told in the class was that at one point he was, in fact, he had taken the family money, he came from money, and he was, I guess, the executor of the state or something. His own sister was suing him, if I'm not mistaken, for actually investing the family money in Federal Express. I'm certain they became quite happy about that later on. But, in the process, you don't know if it's going to make it. I mean, somebody told me recently that Jeff Bezos was telling his parents that, he gave Amazon a 30% chance of making it. 30% chance of making it. Wow. That's amazing. I've been selling books on them for over 20 years. And I wish I knew back then what I know today, huh? I'd probably be in a much taller building. Anyhow, I am broadcasting from 399 feet above Austin. That's my assumption. It's the 38th floor, and I like 3, so I want it to be 399. They are building a new building in Austin. It's going to be like 1,070 feet or something like that. And it's only 70-some floors, so I'm like, maybe I am more than 399 feet, but I don't want to know. So it's about being not dumb. That's really what it's about being. Even in a small company like Federal Express, and they weren't doing well at the time financially, and they were just having a difficult time with everything. And I guess there's a story about a customer service person at one of the locations, and they evidently they had made a mistake, and they had shipped her wedding dress to the wrong location. And so she figured the company was in bankruptcy or something like that anyhow. So she went and chartered a flight to get the wedding dress to her. And evidently, she was the daughter of a bigwig at a company. I think it was like RCA or something, so the story goes. And so that company, who shipped a lot of packages, started using Federal Express. So here she overreacted for the customer, did what was right. I mean, it is their wedding. You can't really ever make up for that in life. And she chartered an airplane to get the wedding dress to her. And I guess the woman later on had been telling the story, and she goes, I mean, it was good I got the dress, but Federal Express took over my wedding because everybody there was just talking about this little company that just went above and beyond, really, just touched with the customer. That's amazing. Like you don't even realize where those happen or when they happen, or, like he also told in that story another time where I guess Fred Smith had went and visited somewhere, and he was on his way back, and he was at the airport, and he just decided to go to Las Vegas, and he didn't have enough for payroll or something like that. And he he went and gambled, and he won $25,000 or something like that. And that was enough to meet the next payroll. Well, those are some of the reasons why I have those core values. And one of them is to manage your resources that you have cash flow. Now, I can't imagine starting a new business using airplanes. I mean, the only thing that makes an airplane fly is money, I think. I don't really think there's much about physics. It's really just, it's insane the amount of money that stuff costs. And so starting, a company like that, it's an airline. It's a package airline. That's exactly what it is. So they spend an enormous amount of money in that area. And there's a lot of reasons why things aren't going to get there on time, especially when it comes to weather and stuff like that. So, but when we say not dumb, what does not dumb mean? Like not dumb, it doesn't mean that we know we're going to be right with where we're going. What it really means is it means that we go in a direction, because we have to start moving in a direction. If you don't move in a direction, you're just going to be spinning around. Like, I don't know why, I just think about being in a foxhole. And, you're just going to start turning around in the foxhole for movement unless you get out of it and start running. And so when I think about not dumb, if I was in a foxhole, which I would hope I would never be in, but I would think that maybe, okay, I've got a drone, and I take a drone and I fly at a direction and make sure that that's not where the enemy is, and I start going in that direction, right? Or I figure out the direction the enemy is, and I go the opposite direction, or I recognize where help is, and I start going in that direction. That's what not dumb means. It doesn't mean that we're going the direction that you need to go. It doesn't mean that we're doing the thing that we know is going to work. It means that we're doing the thing that is doing. We're making a direction. We're taking a stand, and we're going in that direction. And all I can tell you is that the process is hard. It's very hard. Do you know the average person has over 30,000 negative thoughts every day? 30,000 negative thoughts. I mean, when I think about that, it's like we really do have all kinds of negative thoughts. I'm certain that those of us that were more optimistic probably got eaten by saber-toothed tigers. So by this point, it's like encoded in our DNA to be doubtful and question and, not wanting to just charge ahead because we just don't know what is in front of us. But in this world, there is a lot of safety. I mean, when we need to eat, we can go to the grocery store. When we don't have the same kinds of problems that they used to have. I mean, even if we feel like we have absolutely nothing, we really have something. I mean, there really is salvation. It's not very far from us, no matter where we are. Today, I have not been flying much in the last couple of years, and today I knew I needed my biannual, so I flew with this kid today, and I actually want to interview him. I told, you're actually an inspiration. He's getting a job with an airline like in a week. He's starting, and he started flying 2.5 years ago. I was just like, oh my gosh. He was like, I was a pharmacy technician, and I started spending all my money on flying 2.5 years ago, and I really loved doing it. And he got his instructor rating and his commercial, and he flew every chance he could. And right now, airlines need pilots, and they changed their standards. I mean, they moved their standards to where, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, he wouldn't have been able to get on with an airline yet. He would have needed a lot more twin engine time. But right now, they're willing to start training you because they need pilots. So they're willing to take people with with less right now and teach them how to do it, which they do anyhow. I was like, that's really an inspiration. He goes, and I didn't have any money. I didn't have any money along the way. He just started looking and he started looking, and then somebody told him, you just start going to the airport and you start hanging around and you wash airplanes. And I go, I would have told you the same thing. Like, everybody hates to wash their airplane. I guarantee you're going to get some hours and you're going to learn and some money by washing somebody's airplane. I remembered years ago, when I lived up north, I used to hang out at my airport all the time in my hangar, and other pilots would stop by and visit. And when I was washing the airplane, nobody ever stopped by to visit. I remember one time somebody stopped by and he goes, friends are scarce when you're washing an airplane. I was like, oh yeah, it's really hard. They're a lot bigger than they look, even the small ones. So we need to go in a direction that's not dumb, right? That's what he started doing. He started just moving in a direction. He was like, hey, I want to be a pilot. I want to learn how to do this. I was like, you're such an inspiration. He doesn't even realize it. He goes, I did it without any money. And he goes, I still don't have any money. I'm like, yeah, but you have an asset. You have a pilot's license and you have a commercial rating and you have a good attitude. Like, you have a really good attitude about life. And that goes a long way. That goes a real long way. He was an inspiration to me, I'll tell you. I wish I would have met him when I was a kid. Well, he wasn't born yet. Anyhow, we move in a direction. It doesn't have to make sense. It just needs to be not dumb. It needs to be a direction that's not going to get us into trouble. It needs to be a direction that looks like it is going the direction we want to go. Like, we want to start a business. We don't have to know what that business does. Since I've been in business, over the years, I've probably tried at least 9 different businesses. But if we calculate it based on actually making money at it, I've only had 3. Now I'm pivoting to business number 4. And I wouldn't say that I've made money at it yet, even though I've got the business moving in that direction. It's hard. It's really, really hard. But you just have to go. You just have to start moving in that direction. You want to get a business off the ground? Well, the kind of business you get into does matter. I will tell you that. When I first started, I thought, well, it doesn't really matter. And then I got into the type of business that I really wished many, many times I hadn't. Maybe I needed to go through it. My email is now 333@whosben.com, WHOSBEN.com. So shoot me a message if you've got any questions, or you have any questions about a kind of business that you're thinking about getting into or that you're into. Even being a delivery driver, if you get a 1099, you're in business. That's something else I want to discuss on this podcast, is that you're already in business. Now, I know the government's starting to change the way that 1099s are coming so that they look a lot more like a W-2 and they're more focused about being an employee. But I still want to know that, hey, a 1099 means that you're your own boss. Yeah, it's a business. I get 1099s all the time. I throw them away because I'm a corporation and you don't need them. 1099s go to people that aren't corporations. But even if you drive for a living and pick up passengers and take them someplace, which I've had really great experiences over the years doing that all over the world. I get into cars where they have chargers in the back seat, to be able to charge my phone. They have water. I've had them at candies that you can have, and the cars are just usually very clean. I've never had experiences like that in taxis, but I've had it in cars many times where it's the person that it's their business. You take it that way. Well, you can incorporate too. No matter what you do, you can incorporate and you can start getting the money through your corporation. And that's another discussion. But right now, the acid test is the 3 values that I give you, right? Manage your resources so you have cash flow. And that means to When you get money, set it aside. Set something aside. Don't just have the attitude that I'll wait until I make money. It doesn't matter how much you make. You have money going through your hands. When you have money going through your hands, then you need to look at how much you've gotten saved. And if you don't have anything saved, then you need to recognize that you're not good with money. And going with that is the same thing, deals with assets. You have a car, take care of it. It's the same thing as managing money, right? Like you take care of the things that you have so that they last you. It's really important to take care of what you have. If you take care of what you have, I have a Tesla. It's a 20. I got it. They delivered it on March 31st. Actually, that's today, of 2015. I ordered it in, I think, like November or December of 20, maybe before, I don't remember, of 2014. And I think they missed the delivery date. It was like the third time. They were like, you're going to get it in March. And I remember getting it on March 31st. And let me tell you, Teslas are born. They really are. It was born on that date. Not that long ago, they upgraded my infotainment system, and it's like having a new car. It's amazing. It just blows my mind. And of course, I keep it in really good shape, and people get into it, and they can't believe that it's a 7-year-old car. And because of the way that Teslas are born, and everything's a computer in it, it's not that big a deal for them to change the software. And guess what? It's a new car. So, and they were just a terrific organization to work with. They were just, oh my gosh, just talk about overkill. I remembered any time that I had a complaint on the car, they would drive a loaner car down to me and pick up my Tesla and drive it back to the shop. And just a terrific, terrific experience having a Tesla. I've really liked that. I've loved it. Anyhow, and that was starting. And I'm certain that, you know, we look back now and we think how well that Tesla's doing right now in the markets. It wasn't like that. It was never like that. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that I remember reading an article about Elon Musk saying, I don't have any money. I don't have any cash for anything. He was like complaining about it. And there was a time where he was like camped out on the factory on the roof, right? like with a fire or something, and a fire pit or something. I mean, because he needed to get it done. I mean, unfortunately, you have to will it into existence. If you want something to start working, you have to make it work. And I don't even think people recognize what Tesla did with that. Like the Model S, which is what I have, is an aluminum car. And the Model 3 is a steel car. I'm certain that's where all of a sudden they started having so many problems, as they decided, well, let's make it out of steel. It's probably cheaper. I'm guessing. I don't really know anything about making cars. But that was all of a sudden a different experience for them. Like they knew how to make a car out of aluminum, but they didn't know how to make a car out of steel. And then they're doing this truck and they're making it out of stainless steel with an exoskeleton, which is a totally different idea about how they do it. It's just like, wow, talk about somebody that's not just approaching a problem on a way to get through it, but we're approaching a problem and then like, hey, why don't we just throw all of the potential problems we can on top of it? Somebody not too long ago, I remember them saying, you know, I had this professor in college that used to tell me, let me know what's bothering you and I'll help you figure out how to make it a lot worse. That's kind of what it is, you know. It's like even starting to shoot off spaceships, you know, and think, hey, why don't we figure out how to land the engines? I mean, I'm guessing if you worked for a company and you suggested that, hey, why don't we keep those booster engines, they would think that you're insane, and they would probably terminate you for even having the idea. And I can't even imagine that. Like, think of all the technology on the booster engine, and what's it do? It's like get all this heat and everything going through it, and then you're going to sit there and think that I'm actually going to put technology into it so that I can steer it and land it on a barge out in the ocean. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And it's like, and when you think about it, it's like, wow. I mean, you're really making a difference in the world. And I think it should be an inspiration, and it should show you What it should really show you is how we are all conditioned. We're conditioned through the way that we're educated. I'm sorry, but we are. And we're conditioned to be around people about the same age, which is going to limit your experiences, right? I mean, if you're around people the same age, I mean, you're going to probably have way too much in common. But as you get older, I guarantee you're not going to have much in common. I sometimes connect with people from way back in my childhood, and I'm like, wow, I mean, there's a huge difference between us today. I'm like, I am totally surprised, completely surprised. Had no idea, like we go through this struggling journey and stuff, and I remembered all the times that I felt so insecure, and I had no confidence, and I felt like I was just doing the wrong thing, and everything has just been difficult. But I've always had this problem about being a perfectionist. And when I got into the publishing business and the seminar business, being a perfectionist was actually a really good thing. Because it's like all of a sudden I could take something, I could get really good and hone in on how to build a seminar so that it was just a great experience for people. Or when I make a book, and to me, it wasn't just about making a book, it was creating a whole system. I mean, we created all of the software and everything so that it's like a government publishing engine. I mean, we went and I don't think people realize this, but I actually had one of my programmers back in it was quite a while ago. It was a while ago. It would have been back in around 2007, 6. I had him calculate how many words were in the Federal Register. And back then it was 186,000 words in regulations. Now, regulations are not laws. So Congress makes the laws and the president carries it out, and the president is the executive branch, and regulations fall under the executive branch. So, for example, Congress doesn't know enough about flying airplanes, so they created the Federal Aviation Administration, and that's an executive branch government agency. And then the FAA creates regulations, and those regulations are what tell us, how to fly our airplanes, et cetera. But Congress gave them the authority to do it through a law, through a statute, same thing as a law. Very interesting. We didn't even have a federal code until like the 1860s, something like that. And, really when you start thinking about like, what is a law? How does it come about? Like when they vote for something in Congress, I mean, it's not like this, it's not organized like a code book, not by any means. In fact, there's all kinds of stuff in it, little sentences here and there that do all kinds of stuff. They call it pork. Anyhow, you could have a budget, which is only going to be around for a year, but it can have a sentence in it or two that, deals with housing. And so that housing is something that needs to get codified, where the budget, they don't codify laws that are less than a year in length, which would be a budget. So you just think about that. That's a big process. Those people in Washington, D.C., they have to take it from what got voted on and then put it into the code book and organize it. There's a lot of work that goes there. And then regulations are the same way, but regulations are managed through the agencies. And then back in the 30s and early 40s, they created the Administrative Procedures Act and the way that, regulations would become known as we know it. So there's a process they have to go through. They can't just create a new regulation. They actually have to let us know they're going to do it, and then they have to do it and let us know they did it. And they do all that through the Federal Register. And so the Federal Register, I think it started in 1936 or 8 or something like that. And that was the first volume. So whatever today is, we're getting into the 80s on the volumes. And each year, last time I looked, which would have been like back in 2006, I guess it's a ways, but it's probably still the same. There was over 100,000 pages of changes in the Federal Register. That's what the Federal Register is. It's letting us know about changes and letting us know the change when the change is here. And 100,000 pages a year. So we created software that does that. That's just, I got lucky and came across a brilliant programmer, Max. Oh my gosh. I could not have gotten luckier in life sometimes. And absolutely brilliant. I mean, to this day, the software he created still works right. I've never, ever had a single mistake in a regulation since he created that software. It's so impressive. I have had issues in our books, but it's always been the person laying it out from his system. And anyhow, and then the system is what drives our software today, which is why our software is so good. And it's been tested over the test of time, 16 years of all these federal regulation changes and without missing a beat. I get off track all the time. But you know, when I was doing it, I was like, there's got to be a system here, you know? I remember one time we came out with a new regulation, and it was one for truckers. And so I didn't know if it was completely right. So I went out to a truck stop, bought a copy from another company that made it, and brought it back. I cut the spine off so it was individual pages, and I had somebody at a table, like, I'm like, okay, flip page by page, and you know, here's the section numbers, and I want you to just kind of look at it and look that the paragraph looks about the same size. I mean, obviously ours was in color and theirs was black and white, and ours was a bigger font. I mean, it was a lot different, but you can still kind of go through it. And I'm like, anything that looks different, just circle it here, and then we'll go through and investigate it. And what was interesting is that we had found, and there weren't a lot, but there was a handful of issues that when we researched them back through the Federal Register to see what changed when, some of that stuff had been in there since the 80s. It had come out a long time ago and it was still in there. And it's like, how does that happen? Well, it happens because they don't have a solid process. You know, in quality, we learned that it's the 4 M's: man, machine, method, material. And the man is the person, regardless if it's male or female, it's the person. The machine is the equipment used, the software, the mouse, whatever, everything that you're using. The method is the way that you go about doing it, like how it's following your recipe, you know, the method of making, you know, an omelet. That's a method. And then the material is whatever you start with. So if you're making an omelet, it would be the eggs. It would be the pan, or I guess that's the equipment, but it would be the eggs. It would be the milk if you put it in it, or water or salt. That's it. Those are the 4 M's. And it's amazing, you know, when you take something as complicated as creating something and you break it up into those, it really empowers you a lot. Really empowers you a lot. And I've asked many people this over the years, and I'm like, which is the weakest link of man, machine, method, material? And every single time, everybody, when I start talking to them, they always tell me it's the man. Of course it is. I mean, if you think about the method, the recipe, it's written out. That's what you're going to follow. I mean, you might miss it, but if you miss it, that was the man part. That's the method, right? The method is the strongest, right? It's always there. It's written out. It's not going to change. The machine, it's pretty much going to be the same, but hey, you know, your pan might have had a problem with the coating or something, or got burned another time. Who knows, right? And the material. You can have a little bit of variance in the material. You might get bad eggs or something. So the method is where the strength is. The person, well, who knows with the person? You can throw a person at a problem and they can figure a way through it, but it's not a good way to solve problems. I mean, it does solve the problem, but you're not going to have a lot of consistency when you go from one person to another and you go year after year. Anyhow, that would be another POPCast. So how do we move in a direction and not be dumb, right? So then as I'm learning how to do a book, I know how other people maintain books. I know how I would probably do it if I wasn't such a perfectionist. I would probably just maintain it in the program that you're doing it in, right? The word processor. You got all the words in it, and you'd check it to the federal government and find out what they changed, and then you would go in and you'd highlight that and delete it, and then you'd paste in the other stuff. And it's like, I know that method. That's not a good method. That's not the way that I want to do it. Like, I knew that a long time ago when I met the developer for our system. And I really got lucky there. And he created a system that scans the Federal Register and updates it. And it's got all kinds of other little tools there so that we can make sure that what we have is correct all the time. And it's even got a timeline on it. We can actually click a button and tell it, I want to look at a regulation in the future. I want to look at a regulation in the back. And you might think, how do you look at it in the future? Well, you look at it in the future because the government has to give us notice about regulations changing, and that system tracks those. So it lets us know what's going to change. Very interesting. And there's a lot of possibilities in there. And as we start thinking about being an entrepreneur, it's like, what do I want to do? Like, there's opportunities everywhere. It's what got me on the track of Elon Musk. Obviously he's really special. I was reading something about him. I think he wanted to get a job at Netscape or Napster or something like that. And in the article I had read, this was some time ago. Remember, I'm 80% wrong, and there's a good chance that I'm 80% wrong about being the other 20% about not being wrong. And I suppose it's like looking into two mirrors, or, a mirror into a mirror. It just continues and continues. And, it's like, how right am I? Who knows? But evidently he was in the lobby of a building, and he just didn't know how to introduce himself or how to get started. And evidently he got cold feet or something like that and left. And, it's a good thing, because I'll bet the world would be a completely different place without him. And I love what he brought to cars. It's hard for me to want to buy a different kind of car than a Tesla just because of that. It's born like it is because of their attitude towards the car. I mean, the other cars aren't born from that day. I have a truck. It's been dying since the day I bought it. I mean, it's a beautiful truck, but it doesn't almost automatically update itself. I know that Ford will let me download the maps, and I can upload them into the truck, and I'm certain all I need is a USB and go to the right website. And it's probably not that hard, but it's not like my Tesla. I mean, my Tesla just wants to do it all the time. I mean, even when I bought it, it came with an 8-year subscription to the internet. I mean, through, I think it's AT&T, because that's part of why they gave me the infotainment upgrade. It was at the same time that 3G was going out as of February of this year. And so they offered me, my gosh, for like $1,500 or something to upgrade my infotainment system. It was just amazing. I mean, $1,500 and I just got like a new car, and I take such good care of it that it probably looks just like a new car anyhow. That's right. I park a long ways away from everybody else. I never park where I think somebody else is going to open a door next to me. And every time I get out of the car, I take my garbage with me. So I just keep it in good shape all the time. I've never taken it into a brush car wash, where they have the brushes. I always take it to a brushless car wash. And you have to look for those things. And, so we move in a direction of just being not dumb, like he didn't know any of these things were going to work. I'm certain he didn't. I remembered one time years ago, like in 2007, there was like a YouTube video where he's got these Teslas in this room, and he's touches a car, and it's I can't remember, but he brushes against the bumper and it fell off or something. I mean, it was really like that. This is long before I bought my Tesla. I think they were just making the Roadster or something. And he didn't start Tesla. I don't believe he did. He ended up getting involved in the company, I think, and ended up pretty much driving it. And I remember he was just shaken up by it, and he was like, we got to get these things fixed. And I remembered thinking, wow, you don't really know much about quality. And it's but it doesn't mean he's not going to learn it. I mean, it doesn't take much to learn it. I mean, it's really a process. I read something where he was like, it's one thing to get something to start working, like on an assembly line, but it's another thing to start producing in volume on an assembly line. And I'm certain that's where he had all those problems with the Model 3. I mean, yeah, they could probably crank out some cars, but they couldn't crank them out in volume. And it's absolutely amazing. And I just wish we didn't get so much conditioning making us believe that we have to become almost an expert through our educations at something before we can go down that road. You know, if you want to do something and it doesn't require a license, you know, like if you want to be a doctor, you've got to go through school and go through the things that you have to do to become a doctor. If you want to become a pharmacist, you have to do the things that you have to do to become a pharmacist. But other things other than that most things don't have the requirement of education. If you want to become a pilot, you don't, you know, you can fly in the left seat, and maybe some of the airlines might require that you have a degree, but you don't, the government doesn't require that you have a degree to get to the left seat. The left seat, that's the one flying the airplane. They're the one making, I guess, like $300,000 a year or so. That's the left seat. And the right seat, that's the co-pilot, the first officer. And the first officer wants to get to the left seat one day. And we start off flying smaller airplanes and quite often flying along pipelines and power lines and looking for damage and stuff, I guess. We build a lot of hours there so that we become more attractive for an airline to acquire us, I guess. You know, it doesn't require a degree for a lot of stuff. You know, you really just have to pick a direction and then you just start learning it, and you learn it because you care about it. You know, how did I learn so much about regulations? Because I want to understand them. It's like people buy my product. It makes me so happy. It's like, I don't care how much money I make from somebody. I am just thrilled that they're using my product. I'm thrilled that they trust me. And I'm going to make sure that the product that we produce, it fills their need. You know, it was just a direction. You know, if I went through my story about how I got into publishing, it's really kind of intriguing. And I think it would be inspirational for a lot of people, especially a lot of people working at doing it. And I hate to use the word try. You know, I once read that I don't know if it's true or not, but I love it. The Vikings would burn their ships when they would attack an island. I mean, there was no retreating. It's like, we're going to win. Like, we're going to win. This is what we're setting out to do. We're going to accomplish it. How do you do it? You have to will it into existence. You have to go a direction. You don't have to be right. You have to be not dumb. I mean, I suppose that if they're going to burn their ships, they probably don't want to try and attack the opponent where the opponent is on a hill. Like, that would be dumb. So maybe they'll look around for a better landing place. Oh my gosh, I really should have... That's even from my computer at the moment. And I'm doing everything wrong right now. One day I'll be in a padded room. It's like a joke, you know. If you go to a lot of studios where they record audio, it's like there's padding. I mean, I'm in a glass house, and you can see them in a glass house. You can see the windows over there, and I've got my computer. I don't have anything silenced, and I didn't even take the Bluetooth off of my phone before I started doing this today, because I'm just so excited to get going. It's like, we don't have to get everything perfect. I bought a lot of tools and stuff, and I bought my really cool equipment that I'm using, but it wasn't necessary. You know, and I realized that I was just putting more and more hurdles in front of me, and I'm like, you know what? I don't know that I'm ever going to figure out exactly how to do it until I just start doing it. And when I start doing it, I'm going to start making it better. Why? Because that's just the way I approach stuff, you know? That's my third core value. Like, never waver from making everything you touch awesome and impressive. And this is going to get impressive one day. Fingers crossed. And that's all I can say. You know, you head in a direction. You have to pick a direction and start heading in it. And along the way of that direction, you're going to start seeing more intelligent things. Like, I never thought I'd get into the areas of legal publishing. I mean, I had no idea. I mean, how do I go from a mailing service? I was licking envelopes for a living, like literally. I actually had a policy. You look up and down, never sideways. You can get a cut on your tongue and it hurts. It only needs to happen once, but you learn that process. That's a process, right? It's a procedure. It's a recipe, I like to call them. How do I go from that to a publishing business? How? And it was like overcoming problems, That's how it was. It was just like I was moving in a direction. I didn't think I was going to be here. I didn't think I would be creating software that's going to, you'll see, it's going to change the world. I just know it's going to change the world. The things that we're working on right now are absolutely beautiful in the world, and they're going to really make a big difference for a lot of people. Just taking, our motto is, well, it used to be change the complex into compliance, and now it is, I don't know why my mind is drawn a blank, but fortunately, I'm like the visionary in my business, so I'm not in it that often. And it is, I actually was rewriting it on this, but it's compliance made simple, I think. Oh, no. Yeah, and then our mission is, I'm kind of like not even involved in that part of the business anymore. I'm looking really bad. My business card. Oh, which one is this one? Yeah, there it is. Who's Ben? That's who I am. See, I don't even know who I am. Sorry, team. I'll get this right next time. I promise. I'll put it on my website. Soon it'll be a website, who'sben.com, but 333 at who'sben.com. And remember, head in the direction. Don't worry about the direction being right. Just care that it is not dumb. Like, that's a whole different threshold to not be dumb. It's not really asking a lot. It's like you just look at what's out there and know that you're not heading down a really bad path. That's the right way to do it. And if you need a inspiration or something, shoot me an email. And maybe I want to hear from people. I want to hear ideas and problems and things that might be keeping you awake at night. I know I had a lot of them. And I look back at it and it's like I could take 30 years of business and I could just throw them all out the window and I could start closer to where I am right now, maybe just a couple of years ago, if I'd even had a fraction of the knowledge that I do today about business, about what works and what doesn't and how to approach it and how to have the right attitude. And it's so difficult to have that attitude when everything seems like it's against you. And let me tell you, when you do start a business or you have a business or you're wherever it is, it's like, yeah, I mean, when the toilet's not flushing, it becomes your problem. You need to get the bathroom. You don't have a choice. It's like, you don't even want to do it. It doesn't matter whether you want to do it or not. We do what we have to. I'm certain that many people have been through a lot of problems, a lot of pain over the years. You don't have to, but you do have to be determined. Persistence and determination. That's the answer. Passion, obsession, and perseverance. That's how we're upgrading that till today. That's the answer. You head in that direction. You make sure that it's not dumb. And then you do the 3 core values with it. That's what I really recommend that you do. Manage your resources and take care of everything. Really. You just take care of stuff, including your money. You have got to set money aside, especially if you have a business. You have got to learn how to set money aside. Totally necessary. If you don't, you're going to have a lot of sleepless nights. Next, follow up. I've learned that a long time. There's a lot of, they call them brown nosers, and let me tell you, you like them. I mean, why wouldn't you like them? They know what to tell you. Often you're feeling alone anyhow. And if somebody's good at being a brown noser, I mean, they're going to cause you a lot of problems, and you won't even realize it. You'll like them the whole time anyhow, even though they're destroying everything around you. And let me tell you, I've been through that. And I didn't realize it. I didn't even realize it after a decade. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. And I realized that lifeblood in business, it's really about follow-up. You follow up with people, and that's how you see the beauty. That's how you really get the appreciation for them, as you follow up, because it'll be clear. That's something I was never good at, was follow-up. I mean, I always did it more randomly. That's not it needs to be more steadily, or you need an operations person that has that. And then finally, just never waver from making everything just awesome and impressive. If you're going to touch it, make it awesome and impressive. It doesn't matter how much money you're getting. It doesn't matter how many hours it takes. It just matters that you make it awesome and you feel good about it. When somebody takes that time to use what you put your heart and soul into to make it work, right? That is the highest form of respect you can get from any human being, is them making a decision to use your product, to use your service, to give you their money. Hey, till next time, I love you all.